So hey there fellow YouTubers, it's Frank Bush here again. Just figured I'd do a quick update on the solar crate generator that I built in the last video that I put out on YouTube. I've just got my solar panel set up here where I've got two 200 watt Renogy solar suitcases, one kind of on a table above the other. And then here I've got a 175 watt flexible Renogy solar panel. So at the moment I'm pulling in roughly about 500 watts total. The maximum rated capacity for these solar panels is 575 watts, and so that's about 37 amps to give you an idea. I'll show you the PWM charge controllers on the back of the suitcase and what they're producing at this point in time and that kind of thing. But yeah, I'll just cut angles here and I'll show you kind of the output that I'm doing. So this is the PWM charge controller I've got hooked onto the back of the solar suitcase. And as you can see, I'm producing 11.3 amps at 14, or I've produced 14.8 ampere hours, 14.9 so far. And it's been out in the sun for a couple hours now. And at a 13.6 volts. Now these PWM charge controllers aren't the most efficient. As I move through time, I'm hoping to just use them more of a backup when I'm out in the field and hook these up to an MPPT charge controller, and that way I can get more optimized power coming out of them. But the solar panel down below is producing about the same. I'm getting anywhere from 11 to about 12.5, like I say, in full sun. This setup isn't in ideal angles or anything, but either way, altogether I'm producing about 500 watts an hour. So like I say, maximum performance was 575, so I'm pleased with the performance. I'll switch angles here and show you the MPPT charge controller that I installed in the last video. I'll show the power output of the flexible solar panel and how many amps that's producing. So it's really hard to get these camera angles well, but as you can see, that 175 watt flexible solar panel through the MPPT charge controller is producing about 9.82 amps in full sun. And I believe that's at 13.8 volts, sorry. So like I say, it'll bounce around between 9, 10. I don't get quite the power, obviously, because it's a slightly smaller panel and it's a flexible panel rather than a rigid one. And so, you know, there's a little bit of performance loss, but either way, I'm quite pleased. My long-term agenda with this is to put, to replace, if we're in the yard, to replace the flexible panel. I'm going to be installing that on my truck and switching it up where I have 200 watt monocrystalline solar panels that I'll be hooking together in parallel, and they'll replace this for when I'm using it at home. My thinking really is I've got those suitcase solar panels which I can easily port around with me and just set them up wherever I want. If I have the flexible one set up on the top of my truck, I can use that in combination with them, and when I'm at home, to have some smaller rigid panels, like I say, the two 100 watt panels that will go into the same input when I'm at home, and that way I can still produce roughly the same amount of power. But I'll shift angles here again and show you what the monitor is saying that I'm throwing into the batteries. Yeah, so I've got my monitor here where I'm at 82.8% fully charged. When I started this about 3 hours ago, I was at 60% charged, so I'm taking in good capacity. It was a little cloudy to begin with, but things have cleared off a little bit, so I'm getting the extra amps. But as you can see, a bit of cloud, but I bounce anywhere from 20 all the way up to about 38 amps that I'll get when it comes to full sun. So when it's up closer to 38 amps, that's producing closer to 500 watts. and when I'm closer to 30 amps, it's closer to 400 watts. I'm just ballparking to give you an idea, because like I say, as most people that play with solar stuff know, it'll fluctuate depending on the intensity of the sun. And we'll give an update to the solar crate and kind of what's going on with that. I've been doing a lot of small scale testing to make sure that the USB components and all that are working. So I hooked on a little USB hub to one of the USB inputs, just so I could plug in a few devices. I won't be able to pull the same amps as I would having dedicated connections, but I don't really worry about that. A lot of that is just wanting to run small things, like I have USB driven light bulbs. These things use about 2.5 watts. They've got a small internal battery built into them, but I've got them just connected right into the USB so I can run them in the evenings and just use them as auxiliary lighting. And a lot of what I've done, all right, I should mention to you, the 12 volt cigarette adapter, the cigarette lighter adapter that I installed in my build video was a faulty unit. Now, I had some issues with that. I can't really turn it because my wires are restrictive, but I ended up having the door had issues with it and other things. So I'll be replacing that unit, and I shifted up to a more industrial cigarette lighter one. I still plan on keeping cigarette lighter functionality, but as it goes for, you can see, cigarette lighter plug, and this one's just heftier. It's got better wires, it's got an inline fuse and stuff built into it. So I just attached this because I do use my solar cooker, and I use other things, like I've got this cooking pot. Hopefully let me see here. Hopefully the camera's picking this up right, but yeah, I've got like a saucepan that's 12 volt and that type of thing. And I'm heavily debating whether I'm going to switch over to the XT60 connectors, and that way I can still have kind of the easy swappability like you would have with a cigarette lighter plug, but I believe it's just a more durable connection and that type of thing. That's what they use in like drones and model planes and those types of things, right? So they're well used circuit connectors, or terminal connectors, and when it comes to their use and stuff, I'm not really the biggest fan of the cigarette lighter adapters, but as you can see, either way, the solar generator is working well. Like I say, it's producing almost 32 amps at this point in time. Like I say, there's a bit of haze in the sky and stuff, but I'm still well pleased. I should be able to push this up a little higher when I've got the other monocrystalline panels. I'm just waiting for them to come in the mail. But either way, I'm pleased. I'm able to charge this from dead to full in about 6 hours. I'm getting some loss off the solar panels, not where I'm using the PWM charge controllers that are built in. But, and I want to kind of mention one of the gains about having the different panels running on different MPPT charge controllers or PWM charge controllers is the reality of, if one of the panels doesn't get ideal sunlight, it's not dragging down the rest of them. Because each one of the panels are sitting on their own charge controllers, it makes it that sun and clouds and those types of things can affect the panel, but it's all individually that they're being affected. The power going in will maximize because of that. If I had them all feeding in through a single MPPT charge controller, I'd have to be mindful of how my wiring was when it came to connecting things to minimize losses. Whereas when you're running these different charge controllers into the box at the same time, I can have the solar panels angled at different angles in the sun. I had my flexible one aimed at the early morning sun, and it was able to pull the amps in and throw them into the battery, even though the solar Suitcase ones weren't ideally aimed and weren't producing as much power. So when I use this out in the field, having the extra charge controllers, like I say, I did get an additional MPPT charge controller 30 amp. This one's only a 20 that I showed in the previous video. I'll be attaching the 30 amp on as well, but having the additional ones allows it where when I'm out in the fields, I don't necessarily have to use the lesser quality PWM charge controllers that are built into the solar suitcases that are out in the yard there. I don't have to necessarily use those. I'll be able to plug directly into MPPT charge controllers and get higher amperage going in, but it's good to have a backup, especially when you're out in the fields where those units, those PWM units on the back of the solar suitcases are waterproof. They're good in that regard, but they're going to be, in the long term, they're going to be more of an auxiliary unit. They're not, hopefully not going to be the primary, and that way if I have a charge controller die or something else, you know, goes on in that regard, I can easily just change my wiring up subtly and switch it back to running off the PWMs and have it where I'm able to still carry on producing power with the solar panels. As you can see, it's jumped up to 32.1. And like I say, I can see a bit of haze in the sky. But yeah, I just thought I'd give you an update. There is a lot of other projects that I wanted to do, but I know I haven't put out a video in a couple weeks. A lot of it's been just testing the load capacities of the secret lighter adapters and the USB and those types of things. It's been fairly dry, so I just didn't see it as being justifiable to make videos about. But I do have a plethora of different videos that I plan on producing in the near future when it comes to different things. And I'm on holidays now for spring break for a week, so hopefully as long as the weather's half decent, I'll be able to make some more good videos of, I do want to get this out into the fields and set it up in an open field so you guys can see that. And I've got some additional components coming where I'll be hybriding this unit into using power off of the wall to switch my living room over to solar. So stay tuned for that. That'll be an interesting video where it'll primarily run off of the solar panels to power my living room. If they don't produce enough amperage to fully power everything, it'll fall back to the battery stack and start to draw power off that. And if I deplete my batteries, it will automatically switch over and start pulling power off the wall. And then the batteries will start to charge again, you know, with the solar panels and that type of thing. And when the batteries refill again and then get back up to a certain threshold, which I could adjust, it'll then automatically switch back and start pulling off the battery again. So I plan on kind of not only using this setup out in the field, but I also plan on using it to help offset some of my hydro costs in my house. So stay tuned for some future videos. I've got some battery-less systems that'll be going. I do want to use those with the flexible panel in the truck and that type of thing. So I'll have a video coming about you know, putting the flexible panels into the truck and setting up a battery-less system to go with that, so I can use my solar cooker in that and help amp it when I'm out in the field and those types of things. But yeah, lots of videos coming in the near future, hopefully, as long as I get the time. And thanks for watching. Cheers.